This next section that we're going to be focusing on is user entity behavioral analytics. Whenever you're starting as a SOC analyst, you're not going to be going through each of the different event logs and trying to identify what is actually happening. You're going to be using a wide variety of alerting metrics working together to tell the narrative of what is actually going on. And we're going to have a lab here in a little bit. We're going to be looking at a password spraying attack. That'll kind of show you what like a UEBA would say, hey, there's a password spraying attack. But if you go back and look at the actual event logs, you're going to see that literally thousands of event logs can trigger that specific alert. How does that relate to MITRE? Almost every single technique in the MITRE attack technique matrix has a UEBA module that you can enable for it. Now, sometimes it'll require plugins from other things like AC Hunter and stuff, but by and large, your UEBA is going to be looking at the patterns of behaviors that users undergo in your organization and correlating and fusing that information to tell you what is happening. Let me give you an example. All right. So whenever a user sits down and turns on their computer and logs in, where is there a log or event of that occurrence that happens? So someone sits down, they turn on their computer, they join the domain, and they log in. Where would we see the logs on that? You might say the event viewer of the individual system, and you would be 100% correct. Where else? There any other places that you would see that? The router, possibly, right? The router, you would be able to see that traffic start going through that router. Awesome. Where else? Let's keep going, right? So you'd see it in the router logs. You would see it in the local event viewer logs. Possibly if you're running Sysmon, absolutely. The firewall for egress traffic as well. The domain controller, just keep thinking these things through. Domain controllers, right? They're going to log in and activate and go to their domain. They're going to get that Kerberos, sweet Kerberos tickets. They're going to be going through the switch, and we're going to have the content addressable memory table. They're going to go into their email. We're going to see authentication in the email server, right? We can see that in like, Purview data in Office 365. You're going to see a lot of different event logs rather, telling you about this specific event, this occurrence. And that is really what we're talking about user entity behavioral analytics, right? We're not just looking at one event log to tell us a story. We're looking at multiple event logs in conjunction to tell a narrative. An example would be in the cybersecurity realm. Let's say that we see a who am I command execute on an individual system. We could absolutely write an alert for that who am I command, and we could write a detect for it. But there would be a lot of false positives or detection tuning opportunities that we could use to try to refine that, but it doesn't tell the whole story. So if you have a system that's just doing who am I every 5 minutes on the 5-minute point, kind of interesting, not real great, but kind of interesting. But if all of a sudden you have who am I, you have the net command, you have certutel, and you have a whole bunch of other commands executing in conjunction with each other, now you're developing context. Let me give you another example of context, because there's no event log that tells an individual story. All right. So I'm going to tell you a story. Okay. I'm going to start simple, and then I'm going to continue to build context. And I want you to kind of think mentally how that context changes. All right. All right. So let's start at the very beginning. My wife and I were walking through a forest. Okay. So in your head, you're developing a mental model of a forest. And in this forest, there were lots and lots and lots of trees. Now you have a mental model for trees in this forest, because that's what forests have. And as we walked along the beach, we came across a coconut. The context completely changed for a number of you, right? So as I continue to tell this narrative about what happened, your definition and view of my story and the tree modifies. I'm walking through a forest. Could be a deciduous forest. It could be a carnivorous forest. It could be a like a bunch of Venus flytraps. I don't know. I can't speak at the moment, right? But as I add more detail, I create context around what I am saying. All right. And as soon as I get to coconuts and I get to beach, I have now completed the context of what you would expect that particular forest to be. Carnivorous. That's it. A carnivorous forest. It's one of those carnivorous forests, like feed me Seymour type service. See, and even with that, Now I'm completely changing the context again. So when you're looking at event logs, there's no event log that is a straight up you've been hacked event log. It requires context of a number of event logs to be able to tell that story, to be able to explain what's going on. The other thing is, if we're looking at something simple like changing the security policy on a Windows computer system, you never really see John change the security policy. You see John Strand invoked privilege use, then you see the system process change the security policy on my behalf. There's no direct correlation between John and the security policy changing. You have to tie these different things together. Also, if you look at traditional DTECs, in most organizations, by looking at raw logs, not alerts coming from EDRs and things like that, but the vast majority of our alerts come from someplace else. Only 5% of the DTECs that we get are from logs. I'm going to ask a question about that here in just a little bit. And your Linux and Unix logs, they aren't much better, right? If you look at Bash, that's great. We got a counting of every single command they ran on the computer system. Yay. Well done. Yay. Unfortunately, we don't have date timestamps. So we're losing the context there as well. So a lot of this really began a number of years ago in Japan, believe it or not. And in Japan, they have their own cert called JP Cert. And a bunch of security researchers in Japan sat down and they said, you know, if we actually run a bunch of living off the land binaries, so if I go over here, you'll see a bunch of Windows commands, psexec, WMI, scheduled tasks, WMI, exec, VBS, beginx, winrm, winrs, bits. And they're like, if an attacker were using these protocols, living off the land binaries, what would be the artifacts that are created on a Windows computer system? What Windows event logs would be generated? What registry key entries would be edited? What will we see from shell bangs or prefetch files? They went through and they started running these things and tracking what actually happened to learn what we can do for writing DTECs on that as well. And it worked really, really good. So when we're looking at UEBA, we're trying to pull that context. And in BHIS, we do a version of UEBA we call risk-based alerting, where you have just the who am I command executing is interesting, but if who am I with net and a bunch of other things are triggering at the same time, well, that's time to panic at that particular point, right? So we look at that, we look at the logs across multiple logs to be able to tell the story. So sometimes we got Active Directory, Exchange, OA, and IIS logs all working together to tell a narrative and a story of a password spray attack in an organization as well. So what we're trying to do, and this is something out of a tool from JP Cert called Logon Tracer that articulates this beautifully, is we're trying to articulate and detect things like this. We're trying to identify if we have this system in the upper left-hand corner, right? And that system in the upper left-hand corner is like trying to authenticate to all the green diamonds. There's a whole bunch of individual event logs of those authentications that are telling pieces of that story. But we need to look at all of those event authentications in context and in unison with each other to tell the totality of the story that that particular SVC white noise account is logging into all of those systems. Now, false positives, and I know that this is really, really hard for some people to hear, but false positives are not a thing. They just aren't, right? And I know that that seems really, really difficult for some people to get their heads around, but they aren't. If you're looking at PowerShell execution, an organization may have a legitimate service that runs PowerShell to execute properly. That's great. It's awesome. It's wonderful. That's good. However, some organizations will handle that alert differently. Some will say, well, we have this legitimate PowerShell process that we need to create an exception for because it's a system and service process. So we refine that detect to not alert on that particular scenario. Then you have some people that say that alert is an absolute false positive. Let's delete that alert completely so we never have to see it again. See, the problem with calling things false positives is it puts the onus and the responsibility and the blame on the alert itself. If we call them detection tuning opportunities, we then becomes work for us to do to tune that alert. And as an analyst, it's going to be incumbent upon you to do the research using the techniques that we had in the Linux section, using the techniques that we did in the Windows section to be able to reverse engineer what actually happened, whether it's a service account, help desk, systems administrator, scripts, or backups. Now, how does UEBA work? Now, there's a number of algorithms that are out there that they use, but one of them is a simple stacking analysis algorithm. It doesn't have to be technically complicated at all. It can just be stacking, right? Somebody logs into a computer system, there's a +1 value. That person is logged in to a single computer. If they log into another computer, there's a +1. So now they're logged into 2 systems. If they log out of one of those computer systems, they get a -1. So from a simple example of logins, we can set a threshold for an organization, let's say 6. And if somebody logs on to more than 6 systems at the same time, an alert can be generated. Now, let's juxtapose that with an attack tool like Bloodhound. If you look at what Bloodhound looks like post-exploitation, you'll see that individual user account not logging into 7 or 8 computer systems, but literally logging into thousands of computer systems at the exact same time. And this also helps as analysts to spend time understanding what attack methodologies really look like in the logs that they use. Another thing that AI can do is it can learn. It can see what a normal pattern of behavior is for each one of the users. So if a systems administrator usually logs into 20 or 30 systems, it'll adjust that threshold accordingly. If a normal user, Bob, let's say, is logging into a file server and downloads, let's say 40 megs of files because they're working in spreadsheets and documents that are shared a day, it can set a threshold for that. Now let's compare that with Edward Snowden, right? Edward Snowden plugged in an external USB hard drive and downloaded multiple hundreds of gigabytes of highly sensitive and classified data. That would have been out of the bounds of normal, even for him as an administrator. And with your AI algorithms, they're designed to be able to detect that type of activity in an environment. So log analysis. Oops. Uh-oh. Spinning, editors, spinning. Waiting for it. Can you all hear me okay? I want to make sure we actually have connectivity. All right, we got a thumbs up. Boy, it does not like that. You know what we're going to do? We're going to do a refresh, editors. Just recently found Linus Tech Tips. I find his videos are either amazing and some of the best things I've ever seen or incredibly insufferable. I like it when he gives stuff away. Like one of my favorite videos is he went to Taiwan and he went to Taiwan and bought a computer. These are all hidden. Yep. And then after he had like this high-end computer that he acquired. And then when he was done, it really doesn't like my hidden slides at all is what's going on this. And then he walked around the street and this dude at the street corner in Taipei saw him and was like, "Oh, are you that guy?" And he's like, "Yes." And he goes, "Here's a expensive computer for you. You've got to take it right now." And I thought that was pretty cool. All right. All right, editors, we're back. So let's look at log analysis. With log analysis, we can try to make this as complicated or as easy as we want it to be, right? There's a lot of logs that a Windows system can generate, but when we're looking at some of the core event logs that we have to be aware of, Sysmon, of course, is definitely in the mix. Login, logoff is definitely in the mix. The core event logs that we're going to look at are kind of the same ones that Login Tracer looks at, right? We have 4624, 4625, that's successful login or logon failure. Then we have Kerberos authentication in 4768 and 4769. And then we also have 4776 for standard NTLM authentication, and then 4672 for assigned special privileges. These are the main ones. Now, there are other ones that you can absolutely alert on, but if you're going to spend time trying to do UEBA, day to kind of generate that graph of that authentication moving laterally in an environment, these are the main event logs that you're going to need to have. And the reason is, let's say this happens, right? We have a user account that all of a sudden is trying to log in to multiple different accounts. And you can see total number of accounts is 232, right? Total logon failures is 240, right? That's a lot, especially in a short period of time. Now, this is Deep Blue CLI doing Deep Blue CLI type things, right? This is looking at an event log of an attack with a password spray, and it's telling us that something bad is happening. Now, the goal of the lab that we're going to do, and just so you know, Deep Blue CLI is just a stand-in for UEBA because it does some UEBA type things where it's correlating and fusing multiple different event logs together to tell a narrative. It's going to pop up and it's going to tell you, yo, you've got this thing that you need to look into. But then we can actually go into the event logs and we can start digging deeper. And we can see that Samantha failed to log in, Sir Roderick failed to log in, Timmy Richardson, we're going to need another Timmy, we failed there as well. And we can see the individual contributing event logs that generated that alert. Because once again, that alert is not generated from a single event that fires. It's actually triggered from multiple events firing in conjunction with each other. So we're going to kind of do this and show you what this looks like. Now, usually in your environment, you would utilize a UEBA to do this. So we're just using Deep Blue CLI because it's a really good stand-in that shows you tactically what a UEBA solution would in fact actually do. But I wouldn't recommend running Deep Blue CLI every single day in your environment, right? It's great tactically, but it's not something that you want to do all the time. So what we're going to do is domain log review. Now, domain log review, we're going to use Deep Blue CLI to generate that initial alert, just like we had, right? It pops up and it says, hey, you have 232, did not want that. You have 232 failed login attempts. That's what a lot of SIMs will do. They'll just kind of give you some basic information, and it becomes incumbent upon you to start digging in deeper to figure out what is going on. So you're going to go into the intro labs directory. You're going to go into Deep Blue CLI master. You're going to go into the individual event logging on that, and you're going to open up this event log file. Now, I want you to notice that we have DC2 sec logs, we have DC2 app logs, and we have DC1 sec logs. You are doing DC2 sec logs 326 domain password spray, okay? That is the one that you're going after. Most of the time when people mess up is they click on the wrong one. You want to click this one. It's going to take a few moments for the event viewer to log in or log those logs. It's going to take a few moments for event viewer to open. So be patient. It's also possible that event viewer opens up in the sysmon logs. You'll have to scroll down on the left to look at the logs that are interesting. We're going to do some fancy sorting, and then we're going to see multiple failed event logs. So you can see that alert, and then we're going to generate that stimulus associated with it. All right. So this lab is a relatively short lab. Let's go ahead and let's give it till, let's do 10 till, and then I'll do the walkthrough and then we'll take a break. All right, so get rolling. If you need anything, please let us know. We'll resume at 10 till. And we are back. All right, so we just went through a domain log review lab. I'm going to walk through this lab real quick, and then we'll take a quick 10-minute break, and then we're going to jump right back into the stuff. All right, so we're going to go ahead and open up a PowerShell prompt. I've already opened up my event logs as well, just because I'm trying to save a little time. It takes a while for those logs to actually open up properly. So I've got PowerShell running. I'm CDing into the Intro Labs Deep Blue CLI master. Just copying and pasting. There we go. And then we are going to run Deep Blue CLI against the event logs that have the password spray attack. Right? There we go. Takes a few moments for it to come back, but we're going to see that there's a lot of failed login attempts in this event log. We have 232 failed login attempts. Now, this is very similar to a password spray attack, right? So if we're trying to figure out what this particular attack looks like, you can go and look at the password spraying lab. Let me go back to that. Here we go. I'll show you what it looks like. This is not one of the labs that we do in this class, but we consider this to be a little bit of foreshadowing if you want to see what this one looks like. We can open up a command prompt. Let me show you the stimulus on what something like this looks like. I'm going to go into intro labs, and then I'm going to run the 200 user gen bat script to create 200 users. And then we're going to invoke PowerShell after it's done. So I'm showing you what the attack looks like. Like, what does this attack look like from an attacker's perspective? All right. It's creating the users now. There we go. Now we start PowerShell. PowerShell, Bell. All right. We're going to set the execution policy unrestricted. Like so. And then we're going to import the module local domain pass or local password spray. Like that. And then we're going to run the attack. All right. So this is literally the attack that we're looking at, the exact same one. Let me copy this, paste it in like that. There we go. And you can see that we got into a bunch of accounts. We got into about 6. Now, whenever we're running this particular script, it'd be the equivalent of a UEBA saying, hey, somebody just tried to authenticate to over 200 accounts and they failed to log into those accounts. So now it's incumbent upon us to do some research, right? So whenever I come into the event viewer, you can then see that we have Microsoft authentication and we have all these users. We have Samantha, we have Roderick, we have Timmy, we have, what else do we have? We have a bunch of users. Kyle, Bernice, Jackie, all of those, right? So these are all the failed user accounts. So that's what that attack looks like from the other side. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get through a few more slides. Don't know why PowerPoint is deciding to get all touchy with this right now. And we're going to talk about EDR, and this is going to take us right into a lab and a break. All right, so we'll do that all together. So with EDR, it's called endpoint detection and response. Now, this can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people. For a long time, you had AV was separate from EDR, where it was checking for different types of logon anomalies or looking for different attacks. It was kind of like a black box flight recorder on a system. Got into questions of whether or not this included prevention, whether or not it was just kind of tracking what was going on. Then you incorporate security, orchestration, automation, and response. And then you had vendors that were talking about XDR, which is ridiculous, like just coming up with a bunch of different names. Now, there are a lot of vendors in this particular space, right? You got Cisco, FireEye, Cylance, who was bought by BlackBerry and now is with Arctic Wolf. By the way, the Cylance thing blows my mind. BlackBerry bought Cylance for over, I think it was like $1.4 billion. And then they spun it off and then they sold it for $140 million. Now, just for a frame of reference, what is the difference between $1 million and $1 billion? The difference is $1 billion. A million is 1/1000th of a billion. So they lost a lot of money, like 90% of the value on that one, which is pretty crazy. Now, a number of these vendors, they'll go through MITRE ATT&CK evaluations where you can see which types of techniques the different vendors can detect and what they miss. I don't give this a lot of credence. And the reason why I don't give this a lot of credence is the vendors are not stacked or ranked against each other. It's not really a competition because that's the only way that MITRE could get this to work. And then the other thing is they allowed some of the vendors to come in and do tweaking or incorporate it with their overall MDR solution, which I don't think is a really good analysis of this. I find it odd that we bypass these tools all the time, and yet when MITRE is doing an evaluation, they're like, nope, CrowdStrike caught 100% of what we're doing. That is not a nation state level analysis for these products, right? So when vendors do this, they kind of lie, right? A bunch of them in the MITRE space are like, we won. We were far way better than any of the other vendors in this specific space. We won the internet, drop the mic and walk away. And once again, remember, they're liars, right? It's just what they do. It's in their nature. It's like the turtle and the scorpion, right? Turtle takes the scorpion across the river. Scorpion's like just stings the tortoise and it's dying. And the turtle's like, why'd you do that? And he's like, because I'm a scorpion. It's what I do, right? It's just the way that they go. But why are we working in EDR? Because even though they do lie, right? They're way better than traditional denialist AV, right? Just doing sample signature-based detection to try to find out what's going on a computer system is really, really, really a bad idea. EDR is incorporating a whole bunch of next-gen artificial intelligence to look at what is executing on a system and make a determination as to whether or not it is actually evil. Now, when you're looking at these like logs and you're trying to do analysis and you're doing all these, logs are just bad. We know that. So a lot of these EDRs hook into the operating system in such a way that they get a better view of what's going on that computer system. And it's very similar to like UEBA. It's using artificial intelligence. God, I hate that. I just got to get over it. I know they're using machine learning algorithms to identify and baseline what is normal. So most of these products have a deny list of what's hot in the attack space right now. And they'll deny list those right away. And then they have an allow list of what processes are normally executing on like a Windows computer system. And then a lot of them have a gray list. If something doesn't go in the gray list, in the blacklist or the allow list, sandboxes it. Sandbox makes a determination as to whether or not it's evil. It's a gross oversimplification, but it kind of gets you the idea of how this is way better than just checking hashes and learning what's going on files. Now, we love free and open source at Black Hills Information Security. I'm kind of excited. We hired Eric and Whitney. They're instructors of ours, and they teach classes on Velociraptor. Just absolutely, just really, really, really cool couple. They're now working for us at Anti-Siphon, and they're working all kinds of awesome training with Velociraptor and helping us push our initiatives forward. So it's great, right? So we love open source because anytime a vendor has like a free or an open source solution, yeah, my phone is blowing up at the moment. What's the stock market doing? Just out of curiosity, since I'm getting ding, 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 ding. Do I even want to know? I probably don't want to know. Do I? Probably not. All of this has happened. All of this will happen again. All right. All right. So why free and open source? Because we love it. And anytime any vendor is out there giving out free and open source solutions that they can share and make the community better, they're just better people to work with. Now, there are some amazing products that are out there. One of them is this wonderful tool called What's That? Now, anytime you ever talk to the people that develop Wazaa, you've got to say it correctly with the whole Wazaa, right? Because that's how it's pronounced appropriately. By the way, they've talked to me and they're like, dude, we love the fact that you talk about our product, but could you please not refer to it that way? And I'm like, no. We're just going to keep going, right? So it's really, really super cool. And a lot of organizations are using it all the time, and it is free. Now, we don't have a lab around this particular tool because its build is a little bit more intense than just a standard VM that's running in the cloud can run cheaply, right? but it has great dashboards, right? It's got an excellent kind of elastic dashboard. I don't even know what this stuff is, but it looks cool, right? Like, I don't know. You got this flame graph right here. You can see that this is what happens whenever you're blowing propane and propane accessories. No, but it's the number of alerts that you have, right? Down here, we have the individual alerts that are popping up. We got Windows. What is the CVE associated with it? I think these are missing patches, vulnerability patches, because Wizza doesn't just do EDR stuff. It also does some vulnerability management on it as well. Here we've got, what do we have here? These are actual attacks that are coming through. We have Windows scripting, signed binary, proxy execution, process injection, and Wizza agent is detecting it. Super neat. I like this slide because it actually shows that has the capability of doing Docker containers. It can run Docker analysis on what's happening on different containers as well. So like I said, it's a really good tool. Is it as good as, say, a full like installation of CrowdStrike? No, it's not. I'm not ripping on Wizza for that, right? I'm just saying you can run this tool for free. They're giving this up to the community, but I do think that gap is slipping between the really expensive commercial solutions and some of the solutions that have free and more integrated solutions. And the reason why I think that is the more that these tools are out there and people are using, the more feedback they're getting and the tools are getting better. So if you don't have a lot of budget or, and I'm just throwing this out there, you're trying to get a job in the industry and you can't afford CrowdStrike, you can totally run it at home. You can totally run it at home and you can totally learn how the tool actually works. And that's another reason why I love them. Because if you're trying to make your resume pop, saying that you're running a full Wizza instance at your home network is really super cool. The one that we're going to be talking about, and we're going to stop here for a couple of seconds and do a lab on it, is Velociraptor. Now, I got to be honest, I love Velociraptor. Like, this is dark magic. And the reason why I think it's dark magic is because Velociraptor works and it's incredibly tiny. It's a very, very small binary that you can run the server and the executable from. So it makes setting up a lab utilizing Velociraptor really super easy. You can stand it up, run it very quickly with little effort. Now, for the record, Velociraptor doesn't have any detection and prevention capability, but what it's great for is IR, incident response, where you want to query multiple systems for processes, query multiple systems for network commands. You want to execute a command on multiple systems simultaneously. Velociraptor is phenomenal for that. Now, what we're going to be doing is the Velociraptor lab. So if we go back to the intro labs, go back to the lab list, back to the lab again. All right. And we go to Velociraptor right here. Now you're going to open up a command prompt. You're going to CD into intro labs and you're going to generate a config for Velociraptor. Now there's a lot of screenshots in here and it looks super complicated, but you're actually just kind of keeping most of the, actually almost all of the default settings in Velociraptor, but don't get hitting enter too fast because at some time at the bottom, you're going to have to create a username and an email to authorize to come in, right? Then you're going to go through and create the server config in Velociraptor, and then you're going to add a user with a role of administrator with the name of root. Now, please do me a favor. Please put in a real password that you will remember. Most people are like, the easiest password for me to remember is blank. Don't do that. Give it a real password. Sometimes it creates problems with that. So please give it an actual password. Then you're going to run the MSI, and then you're going to start the server, and then you're going to navigate and surf to that server. You're going to get an error. It's fine. It's just the self-signed certificate. You're going to click advanced. You're going to proceed, and then you're going to log in with your, no, we don't want to make that password blank, right? We're going to use the username of root, and we're going to give it an actual password, all right? Once we get in, we'll open up the Velociraptor GUI. Great. Then we're going to open up another command prompt, a separate command prompt. Then we're going to start the Velociraptor client right here, and then it'll connect into Velociraptor. Once we're in, you're going to play around with it, basically. You're going to go to home. You're going to see that you're going to have, after a while, you're going to see it kick up. You're going to click on the show all button to list all of the connected systems. Well, there's only one system here, of course. That one system will generate this little like client ID or a GUID. Then we're going to run a command against that system via shell. Then we're going to run a hunt against that system where we're going to dump all the processes off of that system, going through step by step by step. And then that's kind of the end of the lab at that point. We're going to download the results too. All right, so that is the lab. Now this lab, as I said, we've got a little bit longer. I'm going to give you all until, let's say, 15 till the top of the hour. So we're going to take, I don't know, 40 minutes for break and lab. So let's get rolling. I'll see you at about quarter till. So let's set the timer so we hit there at quarter till, everybody. Just want to say a big special shout out to Tricycle Rider for making me feel like an absolute moron. So traditionally I've had a lot of problems with like, how do I get Office? Because Microsoft doesn't seem to care if you're running like the operating system. But boy, as soon as you get Office, it's like right now they want to make sure that you're paying the fees for Microsoft Office. So the simple, stupid solution is one of those solutions that's simple and stupid and right in front of my face the whole time. Just install LibreOffice and done, right? So that's great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and let's get started with this lab and let's get rolling. So we're going to get started with Velociraptor. They've got training. They've got all kinds of cool things. I'm going to get my command prompt up and running on my Windows VM. So let's go ahead and connect via RDP. Let's give it a few moments to jump in and we'll grab our first command, CD into intro labs. Now, there's a lot to this lab. It takes a while if you go through and you read everything and you think about what it's telling you and you ponder what it's actually doing. It can take a really long time to do this lab. But the reality is we're just running a whole bunch of the default settings for Velociraptor, honestly, is what we're doing. So we're going to go ahead and generate the config right here for the server. Now, once again, I love this. The people behind Velociraptor were actually the people behind a tool called Recall at Google, which was a really cool open source forensics tool. So if this looks familiar to other tools, that's because Velociraptor is kind of one of those earlier incarnations of these tools as well. So we're creating a Windows config. We're just going to go with the default on that. A self-signed certificate, public DNS, just going to hit enter for localhost. What's the DNS name for the front end? Localhost is fine. We're going to listen on port 8000. That's fine. And then it's like WebSocket is a bidirectional low latency. Nah, I don't need to keep that. Would you like to use registry to store write-back files? No is the default on that. I'm just going to keep hitting enter on a lot of these. GUI username and email address to authorize empty to end. And it's generated that config. Going to do the path to the log file is in temp logs. That's fine for me. Go ahead and hit enter. Where should I write the same config file? Right here in this directory, server.config.yaml. It's going to generate the corresponding client config. Now, whenever you deploy Velociraptor, you actually deploy the MSI with the client config and you run them together. And it automatically spools up and it starts Velociraptor for you. That's it. We've generated that config. So there's a lot of stuff here that we just literally blew right through, right? So we've got all kinds of stuff ready to go. Now we're ready to generate the GUI user. We're going to add in a role of, sometimes that copy and paste just doesn't let me go. All right. Lay down your head, dumb. There we go. Dooley. Oh. Why do you guys even listen to me? I mean, seriously, anybody that's taking this class, I can't even highlight, copy, and paste correctly today. All right, so we're going to go ahead and copy this really long command, but what it's going to do is it's going to generate a user called root with a role of administrator. I gotta say, I'm a little bit concerned whenever I do this and it starts messing up. People give me water boy memes. Like, you can do it. It's like, oh, geez. All right, so we're going to kick it off. It's going to ask for the password. I'm going to give it a password of Tor. Big shout out for the Backtrack brothers and sisters that are out there. So we've got root and Tor has been created. Then we're going to run this MSI. Now, the MSI, the way it works is the MSI actually installs all the appropriate files in the right directory locations. So it's basically going to do a straight up install of Velociraptor for everything that we need. And that's it. That's pretty much ready to go. Now we're ready to start the server. We're going to invoke the server.config YAML that we just created up above. There we go. Paste that in like so. Server's running. All right. Now I'm going to open up another command prompt. All right. So we're going to go command prompt. We're going to run it as administrator. There we go. And we're going to CD back into the Intro Labs directory. So what we're going to do at this particular point is we're going to log into the actual server via the front end, which is the web server. And then we're going to fire up the client config. So I'm going to open up Microsoft Edge. There we go. We're going to paste in our URL. Yep, we get the error. Click advanced. I want to face the peril. Yeah, if it's too perilous, nah, I'm going to face that peril. We're going to log in with root and Tor. And Velociraptor is up and running. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Let's go from 75 to, let's go to a full 100. There, that looks better. I like the little Velociraptor with the shield. It's less terrifying that way. All right. So what we're going to do now is we have that other command prompt. We're going to run the MSI. And then we're going to kick off the client. Now, why do I have that MSI step in here twice? Well, you wouldn't normally use it, but when you're installing the client, you would do that MSI step. So I'm just kind of following the instructions of what you would do if you were to install this on another system and follow the directions. Now, you would copy that client config to your remote computer, and then you would run this command to start it, right? Now it's going to connect into the back end of the server. And if you look over here, you'll see the server is making connections. You can see them. They're talking to each other like two Furbies at that point. All right. Very good. Now I'm going to go home. And we're going to show all hosts. And there's our client that's connected in. All right. So we now have the client connection relationship is now established between the Windows server talking back to the Velociraptor service. And if I click on that particular server, I can do all kinds of fun things. Like we got overview, we can do queries against that system. We can actually access the file system on that system as well. Lots of cool things. But I'm going to run a shell command against that system. And I can run netstat -naob, because I like that command. We're going to launch it. We're going to look at the network connections. And you can see the little text freaking out on the other side. And if I click the little eyeball, I can see the results that came back. So once again, this is incredibly powerful if you're trying to do analysis on a system remotely. We use Velociraptor very heavily as part of our incident response engagements. If we have a system that is compromised or we believe to be compromised, or a network that is compromised or we believe to be compromised, this really makes it easy for us to do large-scale data analytics looking for possible signs of intrusion. It allows us to pull down what are the logs on the system, things of that nature. But what we're going to do is do an example of a hunt, right? If we're going to hunt, it's not going to be each individual computer system, but rather we'll be running commands across multiple different computer systems. Now in Velociraptor, you can run it against individual hosts. You can run it against absolutely everything. But the other thing that you can do is you can run it against different groups. But because we don't have lots and lots and lots of computers, we're going to walk through the steps that you would do, and it's just going to run it against the one computer. So I can say I'm going to start up a hunt. I'm going to call it the wild hunt. There we go. It's going to run everywhere, right? We can set up conditions on what is the label. We can do exclusions. We can set up all of these different areas to kind of focus that hunt down to individual systems. I can try to run commands against systems, and what do we got? I can get generic information. We can pull down files. I want to run the one that I know works. Oh, here we go. Generic system PS tree. The generic system ones are kind of neat because if it's running it against a Linux system or a Windows or a Mac, it'll execute that PS tree across all of those different operating systems. So it isn't specific to Linux. It isn't specific to Windows. It's actually something that can run, it's conceptually the exact same thing across multiple operating systems. I don't have any parameters or security resources. We're just going to review it and then we're going to launch it. So we've got it here. We can select it and we're going to play it. And then that's going to run that collection against the system. And on the left-hand side, you can see that data is being ran and it's being it's being dropped to a file and then it's pulling it back into your systems. So now, how does this apply to full-on EDR? Your EDR should have the exact same capabilities that we're doing here with Velociraptor. However, it also has some capabilities of actively shutting down the attacks as well. So Velociraptor does all of the things that you would want a full EDR to do. It allows us to run commands, allows us to pull the results, allows us to do analysis on all of these computer systems across an entire environment. However, a full EDR will also have the capability to not just do those things, but also has the capability for you to do active protection, right? So it'd be this plus active protection as well. And then we're still waiting for, oh, there we got our data. Let's go ahead and open that up. It should be zipped. Can open that file. And then we can look at the results of all of the different systems via a CSV file. So there we go. Now in the future, we'll actually get full-on OpenOffice or LibreOffice installed on this computer system, and we'll use that in the future. But this is portable, right? And the way that we do this is we take these raw data sets and we actually load them up into Amazon to do large-scale data analytics. Because just even one system is a lot of data when you're looking at processes. But if you're looking at it across, let's say, 1,000, 10,000, or 100,000 systems, you're going to need some pretty serious cloud firepower to pull that off as well, right? So let's go ahead and keep going with this. So as I said, I really like vendors that give you free and open source tools and options like Waza. And I also like Lima Charlie because they have a free option that you can run locally on your systems as well. And there's just something about a vendor that isn't like, hey, in order to do a trial, you've got to pay us money. And to be honest, there are vendors out there that if you want to try their tool, you literally have to pay like in escrow, something like $100,000, right? And that's just absolutely horrible to just evaluate a product. And usually that shows that people don't have a lot of faith in their tools and what they're running. So you have Elastic is another one I like. You can set up an Elastic instance. In fact, we have some optional labs for you to play with where you can run through and run Elastic. We also have a Lima Charlie lab as well. Now these front ends change a little bit every now and then, but to be completely blunt, if you're trying to get a job in the industry, and if we look at the labs that we have over here, let's actually go back to our labs. Oops, let's go back to the labs here. You'll see that we have, what is it? I might have taken some of them out. Oh, I did pull them. I'm sorry. They're still there, actually, believe it or not. But we have labs that are kind of hidden labs that are for Lima Charlie and Elastic. And I kind of took them out. I forgot that I commented them out. I can actually uncomment them if you want me to. Let's go in and just uncomment. Or did I not? Did I delete them completely? Wow. Talk about going sideways on this. I did comment them out completely. All right, never mind. But at any rate, I had labs for Lima Charlie. I had labs for Elastic. But the problem that we were running into is my students were absolutely crashing their environments, which is bad, right? We want people to get started and, hey, here's a commercial product. But just for the record, you can totally set up a free account with Lima Charlie. You can set up a free account with Elastic. And we call it the BHIS hug of death. Like, when we try to help people look at a specific product and we have so many people, it's like Tommy Boy in the sale. It's just like crushes their environment. And I've had some of these vendors basically tell me, please stop doing that. So we removed it. I think the labs are still in there. You can actually see them, but oh, there we go. Someone found the raw file for Elk in the Cloud, and there's another one there for Lima Charlie. So these are EDRs, right? These are search platforms, and you can learn how to use them for free at home. So you should be playing with Waza. You should be playing with Velociraptor. You should be playing with Elastic. You should be playing with Lima Charlie. I would also go through and look at Huntress. Huntress has a neighborhood watch program where you can run their product for free on like your individual system. You just can't run it for free in customers. These are awesome solutions. These are awesome companies doing awesome things. And sometimes they do things that I think are absolutely hilarious, right? So Elastic, very, very easy. Whenever you're running Elastic in the cloud, it gives you this command where you download the agent and then you run the agent with an enrollment key, and it automatically installs Elastic on your system. So out of the box, in less than 5 minutes, you can be detecting malware and blocking malware on your system. So you really should be trying to learn as many of these products as possible. And I hope that kind of what I'm showing you is how to make your resume pop, right? If you're like, well, I'm familiar with these concepts, but if you're running Elastic at home and then you run Huntress at home and then you try Lima Charlie at home and you're trying out these various vendors and these various products, well, that's just great, right? I think that that's one of the best things that you can do that makes you look like you're a well-rounded individual. I want to call out one that I think is pretty awesome in their marketing though, Open EDR. From Komodo, who doesn't get nearly as much love as some of the other vendors that are out there, but they do some really cool things, right? Once again, the full source code is available out on GitHub. You want to make your product better, you can absolutely put it out on the internet and let people start running it, and that's cool. But that's not the reason why I have them here. I added them in specifically because of their marketing. Like right here, just mad marketing props. So this is a detect in Open EDR with Komodo, right? So this is a detect. I don't know if you can see exactly what it is that caught my attention, but let me enhance a little bit. The malware that they detected in this alert was Splunk. So if you're looking at the alert, it's like the process path is users public Splunk D. Like, you know who's awesome? You guys are awesome. Great, great marketing. I just, nothing but mad respect for that. And it's not like they're crapping on Splunk. I look at this as like a really gentle, kind of fun little nudge. And by the way, it's not a fluke. If you go through their website and you look at additional alerts and their screenshots, this screenshot is the Elastic agent. Right here, do you see metric beat? You can see Elastic agent, Windows, metric beat. So it wasn't just like picking on Splunk. They also picked on Elastic as well. So you know what? If you like this tool, great. If you don't like this tool, great. But either way, you got to give them credit where credit is due, right? So once again, when we're talking about false positives, revisiting this particular topic, it's not a thing, right? It is not real. It's detection tuning opportunities. Tuning is our job. That's what we do. So if you're working with a product, if you're looking at Lima Charlie, you're looking at Elastic, you're looking at any of these different tools, you really need to look at what is the overall difficulty in trying to do detection tuning and trying to like edit the different rules that are in that product, because that is what makes a product powerful. It isn't whether or not it has a beautiful GUI or anything like that. It's like, how easy is it for me to work with it and tune it for my specific environments? So this is one of those things I wish would like take off in the industry. It's one of those things. It's like, why don't people like my meme? But if you have a single repeating alert, all right, I don't know if I'm all that interested. My interest is peaked, but I'm not really, really interested. If I have multiple different alerts firing, now I'm getting interested, right? If I'm getting those who am I commands, and then all of a sudden cert util is firing on that box, then if I move up to network connection alerts, I am all over this, right? And if it's firing on multiple systems, it's totally got my attention at that point. So if you're trying to figure out how to triage and work in your environment and you want to set up some really, really basic risk-based alerting, this works, right? You just basically go through and say a single repeating alert, not all that interested. Multiple different alerts, now all of a sudden the SOC has got to interact with that. If you have network connections, stop everything. We're going to start isolating systems, locking people out, shutting things down on multiple systems. Katie, bar the door. We're shutting down all internet connectivity. And ultimately, when you're working as a SOC analyst, you need to get to the point where you understand the power of overlapping fields of visibility, right? Your AV EDR protects the endpoint. Your network security monitoring solutions support your endpoint. Your SIEM and your UEBA support your endpoint as well. They all work together to protect that asset. So we're talking about defense in depth. This is what defense in depth is. Defense in depth is not the amount of money that you're spending in your environment. All right, we did the Velociraptor, and we're going to close out for the last section of the day. And then we're going to get together. We're going to do closing ceremonies, and we're all going to laugh. We're going to cry. We're going to plan the future. We're going to get jobs in the community. You're going to stay in their Discord community, and you're going to celebrate your wins as you get them. Trust me, they will come. It just takes a little bit of time to get there as well. All right, so vulnerability management, by and large, is the exact same as it was like 10 years ago. Very few vendors have changed with the times at all. And really, it's test, scan for external vulnerabilities, and that's it. Now, you may have some credential scans that would show up on that as well, but there's been very little actual innovation. Some organizations focus on vulnerability prioritization, and they hope that the vendor is going to do that prioritization for them. And it's almost like this pre-cog, like, dear vendor, tell us which vulnerabilities are going to be hacked in the future in our market vertical. I hate this, right? People think that the attackers in different groups, like in markets of finance or industries and critical infrastructure, like, yeah, these Francois are the only exploits that we are going to use. CISA has told us that these are the 176 vulnerabilities, and we can't do anything beyond those vulnerabilities. And that's absolute garbage, right? When you're looking at an attack, an attacker will take advantage of any vulnerability that is present in your organization. Now, some vulnerabilities are exploited more than others, but that doesn't mean that if a vulnerability that's a critical vulnerability in your organization, if it's not on a list somewhere, that an attacker will not go after it. They absolutely will go after it. So many organizations try to deal with this with just addressing high and critical issues and ignoring anything medium, anything low, anything informational. And that is dumb. Don't do it that way because it creates blind spots. Here's an example. We see this probably twice a year. I'm not joking. We see this exact vulnerability twice a year. So let's say we've got a whole bunch of telnet servers, right? And if we look at these telnet servers, we're testing, let's say, hundreds of telnet servers because it's on the inside of the environment. And we see login, 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 router, login, 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 login. If we're looking at it, we see hundreds, if not thousands of systems saying log in, but we got one or two that are saying router. Or if you're in Europe, you say it router, which is wrong. Don't call it a router. It's a router. It routes. So what's going on here is you have a router that has no authentication. And yes, technically that counts as me breaking into SOC. Okay? Just so you know. All right. So router is an example. It's basically no authentication. And in many vulnerability scanners, it shows up as a low informational or possibly medium vulnerability, when in fact, it's something that absolutely can be exploited. So many organizations just ignore low and informational. And BHIS, oh man, we live and breathe in the low and informational because we look at the vulnerability scans as the eyes and the ears for us, for seeing what is going on in the target environments that are out there. Right? So let me give you an example on how to do this the wrong way, right? So wrong way is We scan 1,000 IPs, right? And usually you're seeing about 25 vulnerabilities per IP. Some are more, some are less, but it's about 25. So that means there's 25,000 issues to address. And most testing companies, when they're trying to go through these issues, they'll go through them and they'll just sort them by criticality and start, well, do we have any Metasploit exploits? Because we got to find Metasploit exploits for these vulnerabilities because we're lazy. And if you're like, do you hit the low and informational? They like, ain't got no time for that. No, we ain't doing that. Not at all. No way, no how. We're just going to focus on the highs and the criticals. This is dumb. I say it's almost always wrong. I just want to say it's always wrong and stupid and we shouldn't do it, but we see it all the time, almost all the time. So instead of focusing on grouping by IP address, where it's like IP address number 1, vulnerability number 1, TLS SSL cipher suites. So let's go and fix the cipher suites. I hate my life. I hate my life. And you do that, IP address number 2. We're going to do that. And then you get into people with the thought process of, wow, security is really hard. Look at Bill. He's got a gun in his mouth. That seems bad. We should do something about that. We can. Instead of focusing on IP addresses, group the vulnerabilities based on vulnerabilities. An example would be the TLS SSL vulnerability. If you have 150 web servers that are all configured the exact same, you have that same vulnerability across all of those systems. All right. Then you can use automation like Ansible, Puppet, Chef, SCCM, any type of group policy to take care of those vulnerabilities across that entire cluster. So you're not trying to figure out how to fix this on each system. You're looking systematically on how we can address that vulnerability across absolutely everything. So to give you an idea, this is something I talked about at IONS. We discussed them yesterday. They're awesome. It's like the InfoSec Avengers, right? And we at BHIS, we have scanned 1 million IP addresses in 3 weeks with 2 analysts. 1 million. And we addressed all criticals, all highs, all mediums, all lows within that time period. Now, we're one of the only companies that I know of that has done that scale. I know Trusted has, I know a couple of other companies that have, but if you're looking at like the big 5 consulting, they have too. And the customer that I have worked with in the past, they hired Big 5 Consulting in to do the exact same thing. And they brought in 4 analysts for 4 months. And they missed 95% of the vulnerabilities that we discovered. And that's because they were clustering it by IP address. They were like, okay, Bill the intern, you get these 1,000 IP addresses. Susie, you're going to get these 2,000 IP addresses. We're going to get through it. It's going to be a rough week, everyone. But if we all pull together, we maybe get through a small percentage of the systems we need to look at, right? That's because they were doing it by IP address. When we cluster that, instead of looking at the 1,000 IP address analogy of 25,000 vulnerabilities, you're probably looking at a few hundred vulnerabilities that are spread and duplicated across multiple different systems. And even if we're looking at vulnerability management, usually you're only looking at 2 little rectangles in the MITRE ATT&CK technique matrix. That's it. That's all that you're going to get, right? There's still so much to do. So the other thing that we can look into is threat emulation. And this is something, we actually have a lab in the Intro to Security class that you can look at. That's Intro to SOC. We go to Intro to Security. There is a lab here that you can play with called Atomic Red Team and Blue Spawn. A little bit of foreshadowing to get you all to register for the next class, where we talk about doing adversarial emulation using Atomic Red Team, where you can look at identifying vulnerabilities that cover the rest of the MITRE ATT&CK technique matrix in a way that your standard vulnerability scan wouldn't do it. All right. So let's go ahead and let's talk about web vulnerabilities. And then we're going to do a web vulnerability lab because many people ignore web vulnerabilities. And we're going to just kind of lock out the day, right? So if you're looking at software development life cycles and you're looking at vulnerability management, this is one of those things that a lot of SOC analysts do end up doing. They do end up dealing with vulnerability management. In fact, at Black Hills Information Security in our SOC, we do continuous pen testing, continuous attack surface management for our customers. So we're running nuclei, we're running all of these different scans, we're learning how this stuff looks on the outside of the environment, we're checking for breached creds, and that's built into what our SOC analysts deal with on a day-to-day basis. But if you're looking at custom web apps, that is completely different, right? That is completely different. With web apps, it's different than a vulnerability scan. It's different than a Nessus or a Qualys or an EI scan. It's very, very different because with web apps, a lot of it is very custom, right? If a vulnerability is introduced in a web app, it's because a developer messed up. And we can use different frameworks like OWASP to analyze and kind of rationalize those particular vulnerabilities that are out there. And if you're looking at executives, they're saying, well, how do we secure our apps? That's a misnomer. You're never done securing your apps. It's a continuous lifecycle process. If you're looking at training, it's really, really, really super expensive, right? If we're looking at how organizations look at their training dollars and how they're dealing with those budgets, a lot of the training options out there are ridiculous, ridiculous cost, right? And by the way, advertising, because this is all advertising, right? All of it. We at Anti-Siphon have a really fantastic web app training class from BB King on how to use Burp Suite Pro. Check it out. We also have some stuff from Kevin Johnson, who is the former lead SANS instructor for web app testing training. So it doesn't have to be super expensive, right? The tools can even be expensive as well. So what we need to do is look at a way that we can incorporate that type of analysis that makes us more robust and defendable in a continuous attack surface management and vulnerabilities testing. So if you're looking at development life cycles, a lot of apps, whether you're writing them custom in your own organization, right? Or you're looking at the apps that you're buying and you're running them locally, you will have continuous updates. There will be continuous builds. And a lot of times security is just bolted on the end, and that's almost always a recipe for disaster. We have this happen all the time at BHI. We were talking about BB. He had a test, I want to say it was like 3-4 months ago, where the customer got on an ROE call with BB and he was like, hey, all right, we need you to get this test knocked out because this app is going live in 30 days. And BB's like, oh my God. And naturally, there were structural issues with the web app. Massive structural issues that were not like, hey, just patch this. It was like, you fundamentally messed up in how you developed this. And that was a hard series of calls because the customer wanted us to give them a clean bill of health and say, tell us we're secure. And we just couldn't do that. We just couldn't do that at all. By the way, if you're interested in testing a little bit of marketing for myself, I am teaching an intro to pen testing class coming up at Wild West Hacking Fest, and it is being brought to you virtually. So you don't have to come to Wild West Hacking Fest. So if you guys can get me a link out that for Wild West Hacking Fest, it's literally everything I know about pen testing, and it comes with a huge CTF lab and lots of hands-on, just really, really super cool things. So check that out. Or better yet, if you come to Deadwood, you actually take the class at my house in my barn. So we do the class upstairs in my barn. You all should check it out. I would love to have you there if you could make it virtually or in the real, as we like to call it. All right, so we get this all the time where people are like, but security is hard. Now, one of the main reasons why people say security is hard, I think, is a lot of people in security try to make it look harder than it is, right? It's like that person at work that they just try to make everything look super difficult that they do just because they makes people think that they're like really valuable and super smart. Security in and of itself, by doing the basics and the fundamentals, is not hard. It isn't. In fact, we're going to talk about the Pareto principle and the 80-20 rule on how we can use automated tools to deal with like 80% of the vulnerabilities with 20% of the effort. So where should we actually be testing? Well, we should be testing pretty much weekly at a minimum, right? We should be working on our environments and testing and doing some type of automated analysis at least weekly. We also recommend your team rotates around the person that's going to be doing that. Like it may be a senior person, then a junior person, then a mid-level person. It shouldn't be something that's delegated to ASOC, the intern, or the super guru on the team. We need this knowledge of security spread across the entire team as much as possible. So what do we want to test for? Well, the automated tools are phenomenal. Like I said, 80%, I'm actually going to go so far as to say it's 90-10. Many of the automated tools, the vulnerabilities that are going to hit you are usually the vulnerabilities that are like that 90% automated tools will find, because most of the attackers are crawling the internet and they're looking for these low-hanging fruit vulnerabilities and attacking them. So things like cross-site scripting, SQL injection, command injection, misconfigurations, really 80 to 85% of the attack surface is right there. Do the tools cover everything? No, they don't. They really, really, truly do not. There are a lot of things like business logic errors, permission errors, stored cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery. A lot of these vulnerabilities require a high level of manual testing to find. But on the flip side, these aren't the types of vulnerabilities that you're seeing skidiots run and get access to environments on a very regular basis. Usually it's a much higher class of a vulnerability researcher and attacker that would find those vulnerabilities. So what tools are out there? Well, Burp Pro, as I mentioned in BB's class, he's dedicated to Burp Pro. It's awesome. And that is the biggest tool that we use at Black Hills Information Security. All of my testers have licenses. They use it constantly. And it's not just an issue of an automated scanner, even though it has that, but it has a number of tools that allow you to do all kinds of really cool research on your customers' web servers. There's also W3AF. Zed Attack Proxy is the one that we're going to be looking at here in just a little bit. Nikto, and many of these tools, if you know how to use them, they're actually better than most tools that are like $20,000. So Zap, it originally started with OWASP. It's been taken over by Crash Override is sponsoring it now, which I think is pretty cool of them as well. It's very similar to Burp. It sets up as a proxy. So if you learn how to use Zed Attack Proxy, you have the capability to run Burp. Also, some people really like Nikto, written by Chris Sulu. And by the way, Chris Sulu works at Black Hills Information Security. He's awesome. I'll pass on the fact that you liked his tool because he digs that. That's fun. So very similar to Burp, which is very, very, very cool. Also, it's free. Very strong development core where people are contributing. It's free. Has the ability to intercept and modify requests just like Burp. All of it for free. And it also has automated scanning, which we're going to be looking at here in just a couple of seconds with a very vulnerable web app. And did I mention it costs nothing? Yeah, it doesn't cost anything. So let's get into that lab. All right, so last lab of the day. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to go back to the lab list right here. Just so many free tools, lots of free tools, you all. So we're going to do web testing. So in this lab, you're going to start up a damn small vulnerable web app. That's not me swearing. That's literally the name of the tool. We're going to go ahead and start up that server. And then you're going to open up Zed Attack Proxy. In fact, for me to get ready for this lab, I'm going to close all of this stuff out because getting to that point of the day, I'm going to click on Zed Attack Proxy because it takes a little while for Zed Attack Proxy to start properly. It's because it's written by Java. See that? That's it. That's a Java joke there. Just too easy. All too easy. We're going to start up Zap, and then you're going to start an active scan against your damn small vulnerable web app, and it's going to come back with a bunch of vulnerabilities for you. Now, this is really there because vulnerability analysis like Nessus and not Nuclei so much, but Nessus and all the automated scan tools, they are awful at web apps. So I'm doing this lab to try to get people to get more comfortable with doing web app analysis. All right, so let's go ahead and let's give you all 20 minutes to do this lab, and then I'll come back and I will walk through, and then we're going to do closing ceremonies. All right, so let's get rolling. If you guys need anything, please don't hesitate to hit us up. All right, so let's go ahead and let's get started with this lab. I already started up my my Kali instance, and I already started up Zed Attack Proxy as well. So I'm going to become root. don't know why I'm copying that command. I'll just type it. I do know that command, right? I can type that command as well. I just get in the habit of copying and pasting because it's easier to talk and copy and paste than it is to type and copy and paste, but that's not copying and pasting, that's typing. So I'm going to copy and paste CDing into the opt web app directory once again, because I'm not a good typer. But then we're going to start out our back door, but before, not our back door, we're going to start our web server. Before we do, we need to get our IP address like so. We got our 10.10.200.243 ready to go there. And then we start up damn small vulnerable web app. Like that. Copy and bam, paste. All right. We've got it starting up the web server. And now we're going to kick off an automated scan against that IP address. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, we're going to shove this all the way off to the left, to the left, to the left, to the left. Your IP address is to the left. All right. And we're going to do an automated scan like that. And then we're going to put in the IP address here. It's going to be 10.10.200.243. And then it's going to be colon, what is it, 65412? I can't remember what the port is off the top of my head. I'm sure at some point I'll have it memorized about the time that I completely change this lab up. Completely 65412. Yes, I nailed it. Sorry. You got to celebrate the little things in life, like Twinkies and getting the right port on the first try. Thank you very much. And now we're going to kick off our automated scan, right? We're just going to go ahead and we're going to click attack. Going to give us a question about running headless. So right now it's attempting to go through and crawl the website. You can see the activity down below. Now it's switching over. Yep, we'll go ahead and do that. The browser's not supported. Going to click OK. And now we've kicked off the active scan. So what this is doing is it's identifying all of the input fields in the damn small vulnerable web app. And now it's actively going through and attempting to insert a number of different attack strings into every single one of those enumerated ports or fields. And I can look at the status of it on all the alerts over here as it's finding the vulnerabilities. So it's finding SQL injection. It's able to find that it's a SQLite database. I'm going to come back to that in a second. It's got cross-site scripting, external redirect, path traversal, remote file include, and so on. So if I click on one of these with the SQL injection, if you look up above, it's actually changing and it's showing me the GET request and the response. So if I select one of the SQL injection attacks, it's going to send us the response and it's going to say SQLite 3 error in my SQL syntax. So that's how it knows that there is a SQL injection vulnerability, because that web server responded back with a SQL error. And if I want to see what was the attack that triggered it, I can actually see that attack right there. So it gives me all of the stimulus and all the responses of the vulnerabilities that it's discovered. But it also has additional notes and information about what those vulnerabilities are and how you can learn more information about it from OWASP. So that's kind of it. You can run on some public websites. You absolutely can. One of my favorite websites is Acunetics Art. This is a website that is by Acunetics that has a web app scanner, and it is completely set up for you to run scans against, right? So if I wanted to, I could take this testvulnweb.com. I'm going to copy that. And I can go back and I can stop my scan. Let's go over here. Let's go to active scan. Stop. There we go. And I could just put in another quick start scan. And instead, I'm going to put this in here. I'm going to go attack. And now I'm going to attack that publicly facing website that's out there. So let me go ahead, pull this up. Yep, that's fine. There we go. So now we're testing a completely different website that has more vulnerabilities in it as well. So it's going to kind of mix up the alerts between the one that I did before and the one I did now, but still you're going to want to probably restart. But yes, this whole entire website is dedicated to nothing but SQL vulnerabilities. Like you can do a single tick here and do a search. I can do another one. Let's see if I can find anything. Apostrophe. One semicolon space dash dash like that. There we go. Now I've got a SQL. I got a SQL injection attack here. It's a MySQL database that I was able to do that. I wonder if it has a login page. I wonder if I can bypass login. No, I shouldn't do this. I'm getting completely sidetracked at the moment. Sorry, that happens to me all the time. I get sidetracked on this. Now, does anybody want to take a wild, crazy guess as to why we don't do this lab against Acunetics Art for everybody in the class? Yeah. We bring it down like to the ground, burn it, and that's bad. So once again, it's called the BHIS hug of death. All right. So I want to call out a couple of things before we get too crazy with everything that's going on. The first thing I want to do is I want to kind of call out some of our sponsors that have helped us out with this and everything that we're doing here. The first sponsor I'd like to do is Google, just because I love you, Google. And the fact that Google is just like the best browser, and the best way to get to the, not browser, search engine is to go through Bing. Every time you Google in Bing, or Bing, Google in Bing, a little bit of somebody's soul dies. And that person is Steve Ballmer. Even though he's not at Microsoft, I know he hates it. So I want to call out a couple of different people that are huge supporters of what we're doing. And if you could do me a favor, right? If you could do me a favor and give a shout out to these organizations. The first one I want to do a shout out is SaaS Alerts. So if you could please go to SaaS Alerts. Wait a minute. Where is there? There we go. If you could please do me a favor and go out on Twitter, if somebody could find the Twitter handle for SaaS Alerts and just say thank you. Maybe I can just find it myself. Do SaaS Alerts. So we do SaaS Alerts, Twitter. They're part of Kaseya. They're on x.com. Right. So call it. Here we go. If you could please go out and you could say thank you to these guys, I would greatly appreciate it. I know that some of you don't use Twitter. If you can find them on Blue Sky, that would be very, very, very cool. I would appreciate it. And these are people that have sponsored our Pay What You Can initiatives. The other group that has sponsored our Pay What You Can initiatives is Pingcastle. A fantastic tool for doing Active Directory analysis. And if you could please give them a shout out. It's not the actual company, even though they're owned by networks, but they're on x.com. It's actually a dude's account. I can't remember which account he has. Somebody can find it for me. That would be awesome. But these are another groups of people that have just been super cool with everything that we've been doing here. And it's weird because we're doing this Pay What You Can, and a lot of people, they just don't. They don't have to sponsor us, but they do, and we greatly appreciate it. All right. The next one I want to call it is Barricade Security. They're pretty awesome as well. And I don't know, Megan, do we have the Twitter link for them?
I'm sure I can find it.
Yeah, if we could find them. But they're great. They've been with us for a long time, and we greatly appreciate it. So the final person who actually doesn't have any social media is Arnie Bellini. And Arnie is on LinkedIn, and he's just, I don't know, it's just kind of cool when you come across somebody who is doing just a fantastic amount of work. And it took a long time for Arnie to actually allow me to talk about who he is and how he's helping us with everything that we're doing. But he's on LinkedIn. If you could do me a favor, if you could reach out to him and you could say thank you. He covers a lot of the costs of the infrastructure and the labs that we have here. I actually met him at a conference in Florida. I was just sitting at a lunch table, and we were in between. Oh, there it is, my smart login for Pingcastle. So please say thank you to him. But Arnie just was sitting next to me, and we got to talking about mountain biking. He does triathlons. He swam the English Channel twice. The first time he was unsuccessful, even though He says he was unsuccessful. Now, you tell me what you think. Apparently, he was a few hundred yards from shore, and the guy he was swimming with across the English Channel died. I'm not joking. Literally, flat out died right there next to him. So Arnie stayed with the dude, and people came out with, of course, boats and stuff. And then he didn't complete that. And he's like, yeah, well, I didn't complete it on my first try. I'm like, dude, you literally were trying to save a dude's life. Like, you're a few hundred yards from the shore. He went back and he did it again. So we kind of talked back and forth. And the next day, or during that conversation, he was like, if there was one thing that would help your pay what you can initiatives, what would it be? And I'm like, man, I'd really love to have labs that are in the cloud for students so they don't have to download VMs. And sure enough, like the next day, he's like, here's my card. We're going to make this happen. And there's Barricade Cyber. Megan shared it out on LinkedIn. Please go say thank you to them. They're like, seriously, they're like a sister company to Black Hills Information Security. And we love them as well. So I kind of want to like do a couple things. Megan, while you're getting ready to pull down our winner,
I
I'll
got
dance
it.
for time.
I got
How's
it.
that? All right.
I made sure that I was prepared this time.
All right, here we go. So Megan, who has won the $150,000 package if we were doing this in Sandsbucks for our anti-siphon training catalog?
Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
Ty Ash, Tyash. Are you here still? They have to check in to win. I like
That's a me. There we go. Woo!
All right, I'll send you a direct message and get your information. Thank you.
Fantastic. And also, as we said, that catalog is available. I think we decided it's something like ridiculously like large discount, but our entire catalog is available for $1,500 per year. If you want that link, we've got it over in resources. All right. So I want to do some kind of closing things, and we're getting better at this, Megan. I think Daryl's still around. We're getting better. We don't get into tears as much as we used to, but we still do get into tears.
But we're not jaded about it.
We're not jaded. No. It's
hardened.
joyful. We're not jaded. We're joyful. And I kind of want to like kind of set the stage for how this happened and what we do and why working with vendors that are just so cool that support this initiative is so important to us. So right around COVID time, we started having conversations about underrepresented people in the industry. All right. And there's a whole bunch of underrepresented groups, right? You have women, you have African Americans, you have Native Americans, you have Pacific Islanders, you have all these different groups that are underrepresented because this entire industry looks like me. And I hate that because I got to be honest, sitting around with a bunch of middle-aged white dudes talking about Pearl Jam and Star Wars, I don't want to do that anymore. Okay. I'm kind of a little bit tired of doing that. People are like, why is diversity important in computer security? Because it's boring otherwise. I mean, good God, look at the food we would have to eat. It'd be like pizza every day. It's like, what do you want, pizza? Oh, God. All right. So we had this conversation. We want to increase diversity in our community, right? And one of the things that everyone reaches for constantly is we need to reach for scholarships, right? We're going to go give scholarships to X number of women, African Americans, and all these different like underrepresented groups. And I'm going to be honest with you, I hate that. By the way, I totally understand the scholarships to people, their heart is in the right place. And I know it changes people's lives. It doesn't change anything in the game. It doesn't change anything at all in the world, right? It just makes the organization feel good and it makes that one person makes a difference in their life. And that is great. That is awesome, by the way. I just want to make sure that everyone's heart is in the right place, but it doesn't change anything. And that bothers me. Because if we do scholarships for women, or we do scholarships for African Americans, or we do scholarships for Native Americans, there's a whole bunch of other groups that are also underrepresented and people that just can't get into the community. And honestly, if you're looking at like what is underrepresentation and how that actually works, there's all kinds of groups and people that don't have a shot at getting into this field. And the one thing that's consistent across the board about why they can't get a shot in this field is money. Right? Let's talk about the poor people group. Right? It's money. If you're African American and you can't get into the communities because money. If you're a Pacific Islander and you can't get into the community, money. Native Americans, money. Women, a lot of times, money. And somehow, whenever we start breaking this crap up into all these different micro groups, I honestly feel sometimes it turns us against each other, right? And I'm not saying that. I don't want to take political sides on anything. I just think that a lot of people can sit down and realize that there's a shared narrative of being poor. Whether you're an African American who's poor, whether you're a Native American who's poor, or you're a white person growing up in the middle of the Black Hills who's poor. That shared narrative exists, and it transcends it transcends race. It transcends religion. It's something that hits everybody. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to do something that actually destroyed that barrier to entry, regardless of where you're coming from. Because I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what your ethnicity is. I don't care where you came from. The only thing I care is that you show up willing to learn, excited about getting into the community, and damn it, bring your delicious food to the table. Sorry, it's very British and colonial of me, don't you think? But we wanted to fundamentally change the game. We wanted to change it in such a way where we can create these opportunities that normally do not exist for people. And the only way that we could do that is by giving it away for free. So to that end, I want to thank two main groups that have attended this class. The first people that I want to call out is I desperately want to call out and say thank you to all of the people who paid for this training. If we can give them a round of applause, I want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts, because it does cost. It does take money for us to be able to do this. And you all do make that possible, because it isn't something that just freely happens, right? Everybody that's here has a cost associated with it. We have server space. We're paying for all these things. We have some of these sponsors that are helping us, and that's great. But you people that paid, you helped make this possible. And I want to say thank you. The other group that I want to call out that I think is very much equally important is the people that didn't pay. Now, this isn't going to turn into some, like scammy religious thing where it's like, but if you could find it in your heart to just give me $5. No, that's not where I'm going. It's not where I'm going. Because for those of you that did not pay, I know that you chose to be here and you gave the one resource that everything in your life revolves around and value is determined, and you gave us your time. I know what it's like to be an hourly wage slave. I know what it's like to be in a family where conversations are around food, heat, or shoes for kids. I know what it's like to be in a family that duct tapes shoes together just to get a little bit more mileage out of them until you can afford shoes. And I know how absolutely goddamn infuriating it is whenever people who are wealthy say, well, how about you just have a few less lattes? Because $5 matters, $25 matters. I know what that's like, and I see you. And the team here at Anti-Siphon Security Training, we see you and we value you. Even though you didn't have money, you showed up and you gave us the one resource that you had to give. You gave us your time. You gave us your time when you could have given it to your children. You gave us your time when you could have given it to your spouse. You gave us your time when you could have given it to yourself to psychologically, physically reset before you go back to work doing bone-crushing work for an hourly wage. What is it? Bullshit pay? Bullshit work for bullshit pay? And I understand that this time that we have had is probably the most precious thing that you can give to us, and I greatly appreciate it. And those people need a round of applause as well. Because I got to be honest, I'm going to throw hands if I start talking to people anymore that are like, well, poor people are poor because they're stupid. No, no. I mean, my family grew up blue collar. They worked their asses off. I'm damn proud of my mother. I'm damn proud of my father. I'm damn proud of all of the ranchers on both sides of my family. And all they had to give was time, folks. So I appreciate your time. So as we close out this session, I have one more request for all of you. One more request for everybody that is in this session. I'm going to ask you to help amplify the signal. We are desperately trying to get out. We're trying to change the lives of as many people as we can. And this industry is now hard to get into. There's no question that this industry is now very, very hard to get into. But with this class and what we're doing and what we're trying to do to build people up with where they're at, I'm going to make it a little bit easier for a number of you to get into the industry, to get you the right training, to get you the right certifications, to get you the right skills to hit that job and kick ass at that job. So with that, help us amplify the signal. And with that, I just want to say one more time, thank you all for your time. Thank you all. And I can't wait to see you in another anti-siphon training class in the near future. With that, get out of here. Everybody stay safe.
All right, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for SOC Core Skills. Everybody that registered will get their certificates of completion overnight tonight with a feedback form. Please fill it out. All feedback, any and all feedback is welcome. And with that, we'll miss you guys. Thanks so much for spending time with us this week. And Daryl, kill it with fire, buddy. Have a good one, everyone.